and buy and hold investor here for a little over 3 years. Um,
All right. Hey, everyone. How you doing?
Doing great.
Good, good.
Hello.
Hey guys, thanks for being here. It's about time to get started. Let's get started. So let me get my screen shared. And for everyone that wasn't here last week, my name is Pat Barman. I am a realtor and real estate investor in Cleveland, Ohio. And Cashflow Chris is out of town this month, so I am filling in his big shoes and enjoying a great book with everyone here. This is week 2, and we're talking about the 4-hour work week. So let me get my slideshow going. All right, perfect. So this is the Leveling Up Book Club. And a couple reminders before we start. This is done every Friday at 10 a.m. Mountain Time, 1 p.m. Eastern. Have a copy of the book during the discussion, and it's conducted live on Zoom like we're doing right now. It's definitely a conversation, so any thoughts and insights are encouraged inside of the group. I don't want to talk for an hour. I want to hear your guys' opinion. It's an interesting book with some good ideas. I want to hear what you think about it too. And we can all talk together, make it fun. Do the work, make sure you read. It's not that overwhelming. It's 100 or so pages every week. No distractions, keep your phone off, and keep an open mind. There's some good ideas in here, but it's definitely not the norm. So it seems like everyone here has an open mind. We're entrepreneurs, doing our own thing. So keep an open mind and see what we can learn together. So again, we are doing the 4-hour work week, escape the 9 to 5, live anywhere, and join the new rich. So quick recap again, a couple things about Tim, how he went from $40,000 per year and 80 hours per week to making $40,000 per month, working 4 hours per week. He talks about outsourcing his life, becoming an escape artist, traveling the world, eliminating 50% of your work, and trading a long-haul career for short work bursts and frequent mini retirements. We talked a lot about that last week, about decluttering your life, having mini retirements, kind of focusing on what's important. And we're going to delve more into that this week. And again, it's about original thinking, living on your own terms. There's an A, a B, getting a job, working your ass off, building a business, working 80 hours a week. But this is about a third option, a type C lifestyle, which is becoming a new rich, being rich in time and freedom and building something that is yours, that you run it minimally with your time rather than spending all of your time slaving away for retirement that may or may not come. So that's what we're going to talk about again. And we are going to start on part 3 today. And part 3 is A is for automation. So we're going to start with chapter 8. And what we're talking about here is outsourcing your life. So this is focused on hiring a personal assistant, be it an in-person assistant or a virtual assistant. There's a lot of different things that come out of this. Jerry and I were talking before we got started. We talked about having control of people, what that's like, and it does teach you how to give orders to be a manager and to be a commander instead of commanding people. He gives some pretty good insights about what he does, what he learned, to be concise and precise with his VAs to really make them effective and make his life much easier. So there's a couple different types of assistants. He's talking about having an overseas assistant here. It does teach you remote management and communication skills. Talks about having different VAs, or if you could have one here in the States, how that's a little bit different. It's costlier per hour, but they have different attributes to having someone, overseas that you're paying $4 an hour. There may be more direction in terms of a language barrier you need to overcome. And then versus having one here in the States, sometimes you spend a little bit more per hour, but you have someone that can, be on the same schedule as you, answer phones for you. Their English may be, perfect. So the pros and cons of the different types of VAs you can have, it really does make a difference. And think about, hey, I could probably hire someone overseas for $4 an hour, but based on my line of work and my business, is that really the best? So it's just something to compare and contrast the two different types that he has. And again, this is about building a system to replace yourself. The point of a VA is to make your life easier and better, to cut out decisions you have to make, so you're not answering everything and spending all your time. So that is the point of it, is to have a system in place. If you have a VA or assistant and they're calling you every 5 minutes to ask you simple questions, that's tedious. I mean, that's wasting your time. So the system is it. You're trying to have a system in place to do this. He talks about eliminating before he delegates. Don't hire someone to read your email if a spam filter can do the same. So just a simple thing you can do, rather than, hey, read my email and I get 250 emails a day. You could have a quick auto reply like we talked about last week, to eliminate most of those. And then, I get tons of spam every day. You don't need someone to try and decipher that every day. That's a waste of your money and their time. So just before you do it, kind of automate things a little bit, just to make sure that your money is well spent and their time is well spent too, because it's frustrating for you if you feel like, you're wasting your money and time, and for them too, if they're sitting there, reading emails all day, they're not going to be happy and they're not going to be productive. So just to make sure you're ready to go before it gets started. He talks also about assigning tasks. They must be time consuming and well defined. So with this, he actually gives a couple really good examples of some emails that he sent out to his VA. One was like on his first day having an assistant versus, later after learning how to do it. He talks about that. So actually, I'm going to pull that up right now and read that, because I think it's actually a good way to see, how to use these VAs. So in the book, if you've got the book, you want to take a look at it. Page 141 talks about kind of the wrong way to speak to write emails to your assistant. So I'll just kind of paraphrase it, but he says, "Dear Abdul, here are the first tasks due at the end of Tuesday. Please call or email with any questions." He tells him to go to an article, look someone up, and do the same for one other person. Schedule a 30-minute interview with a few other people. Find the name, email, and phone number of workers in the U.S. who have negotiated remote work agreements. And send me the links of their profiles. And he says at the end, look forward to seeing what you can do. Please email me if you don't understand or have any questions. So while this may seem initially like, hey, this is a pretty clear instruction manual of what needs to be done, it turned out that it took this person 23 hours to book an interview, which is a tremendous amount of time that you're paying someone. And I also believe that it was booked in the wrong time, the wrong time zone. So it just wasn't clear enough. You're asking someone overseas who, their second language is English, to kind of decipher this and to maybe not understand like social context or, really what they're looking at. So I'm sure that in the mind of the VA, they were doing a good job. Like, hey, I got to do this. This is important. I can take 5 days on it. There's no clear definition of what, maybe an example of what it should look like. Hey, let's check in 2 hours. you don't end it with, please email if you don't understand. People don't want to feel or look stupid. So, if I'm hired as an assistant for someone and they say, well, you should understand how to do this, just email me if you don't. They're probably just going to be like, well, I don't want to look stupid, so I'm not going to ask any questions. Does anyone have any comments about that, about the email that he sent, or just the idea of not having precise directions for a VA? Elizabeth, do you use an assistant?
I do. Actually, we have a pretty big army of VAs.
Okay.
So yeah, we have team lead VAs and then junior VAs beneath them. So we
Okay.
have everything pretty structured, whether it's SMS campaign, cold callers, that's another team. The acquisitions is another team. Our TC is another one, Dispo is another one. So yeah, we have pretty much VAs for each task or department, if you will.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like you probably learned some lessons dealing with so many, but this was Tim's first shot at doing it. He learned a lesson, which we'll kind of look at a good email that he wrote, which is on page 143, which is much more precise with, it's just much more asking a very specific question, I guess. So that's on 143. I'll paraphrase that for you guys. Dear Soumya, thank you. I'd like to start with the following task. I need to find the names and emails of editors for men's magazines in the US. Then he gives an example. For example, Maxim, Stuff, GQ, Esquire, Blender. This is very precise. Like, just think if you were to not put that in, for example, if you're living overseas, you don't know what a men's magazine would be. So that's great that he did that. Have also written books. And also an example of such a person would be A.J. Jacobs, who was editor-at-large of Esquire. So again, not only does he give like very specific examples of the magazines, he says, hey, this is the exact person, this is their website, I want people just like this. Can you do this? If not, please advise. So he's asking them, hey, just let me know if you can't do this. It doesn't seem like you're dumb if you don't understand. It just says, hey, just let me know, advise me. Please reply and confirm what you will plan to do to complete the task. So he's asking a question, hey, do this. Let me know what your approach is gonna be and just get back to me. And he gives a deadline. Hey, I'm gonna rush. Get started after your next email and stop at 3 hours and tell me what results you have. Please begin this task now if possible. The deadline for these 3 hours and reported results is end of day Monday. Thank you for your fastest reply, Tim. So there's a very specific deadline. There's a check-in. Hey, get back to me in 3 hours. If you get a reply in 3 hours that, hey, I don't know what Maxim is, or Esquire, I don't know what that is. Like, then you kind of know, like, hey, this task maybe I have the wrong assistant, or this is too much for someone overseas. I'll do it myself. But there's check-in points, so it's not like, hey, 5 days later, oh yeah, I never even got that email, or I don't really know what you're talking about. There's a plan to it, and there's a big difference in the results he had. So I thought that was really interesting what he did and what he learned, and this is good advice for us too, for Elizabeth, having her own VAs. Jerry and we talked about him, getting people working for his wholesale business. So I thought that was great advice. And then at the bottom here, we have some examples of some tasks. So some things they can do: schedule meetings, web research, proofreading, document creation, website moderation, things like that. The book goes into some cool examples of things they can do. And really, I think they can do anything. If you have a request that's electronic, I'm sure you can find someone somewhere to do anything for you. That's pretty valuable information, I think. All right, so on the next slide here, we're talking about chapter 9, which is income autopilot. Most of the ultra successful companies in the world do not manufacture their own product, answer their own phones, or service their own customers. I guess it's interesting to think about it. And the example he gave was Microsoft and Xbox. You know, Microsoft, they own the rights and they create all the software and hardware for Microsoft, but they don't actually manufacture it. It's done overseas by someone that can do it for much, much cheaper than doing it here in the US. I think another example he gave in the book was, I think there's like 3 factories in China that produce like 90% of bicycles. So it's not, you know, created in a bike store in your town. It's all done overseas. And those are the companies that make the most money, that kind of send everything to a specialist, to a manufacturer to do everything for them. With that being said, the goal should not be to create, the goal should be to create a vehicle for generating cash without consuming time. Again, we talked about this the last week. You know, time is your most valuable asset. You don't want to, you know, waste it and spend all your time, you know, doing things that you don't like and you're not good at. So if you can find someone that likes to do it and they can do it for cheaper, it just makes sense to have them do it for you. It's a win-win for them and for you. He talks about creating a market, and with this, he says, pick an affordably reachable niche market. So with this, there's an example of someone named Sarah who creates a business for a t-shirt business. She basically makes money initially, and then it turns out in the end, she doesn't really plan things very well. She kind of runs it into the ground, where at the end of the story, and she has 50 extra t-shirts that she can't sell in the garage. She's making like 50 cents per t-shirt. It just doesn't work out. So she doesn't have a market first. She has a product, and then she kind of hopes like, hey, I got this t-shirt. Let's hope I can sell it. But she doesn't really plan very well, or really at all. And it ends up, one, costing her stress, time, and money. I mean, she's got 50 t-shirts in her garage that she can't sell. So the alternative is to pick a reachable niche market, find the market first before you create the product. You have to understand what the customer's needs are, what they're looking for, what problem you're solving, and to really focus. If everyone's your customer, then nobody's your customer. You really need to like be very specific of what you're trying to sell, and who the buyer would be, which is vitally important. So I guess for me, it says, which industry or professional groups do you belong to? So my niche thing that I do is I play racquetball. So there's not many people that do that, especially my age. Most people that play racquetball are, you know, in their 60s. So I was trying, me and my buddies, we brainstorm ideas about, you know, how to make racquetball more interesting, you know, racket ideas, different balls we can create, but it's got to be like a very small niche market. If I tried to just sell, I don't know, football equipment to NFL players or something like that, it's not specific enough. It's got to be like a very niche thing that people love and care about. You can't sell everything to everyone. So that's a couple questions for you guys. What would be a good niche for you? Which industry or professional groups do you belong to? And what can you associate yourself with? Are you in any groups, clubs, any specific unique sports that you think you can create a niche out of? Anybody? What about you, Jared? Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Was that Kelly?
That's me. So I'm part of the Chamber of Commerce here in Arizona. Some of like the chapters like Glendale and on Phoenix. And so now with what's going on, it's a little bit more difficult to network, but that was my niche at first, was like small business owners who were trying to, purchase homes in the area. And then and then it became like, okay, what type of audience that I want to work with, or, a type of market that I wanted to work with. So then I wanted to, specify more first-time home buyers and then first-time investors. So people who were purchasing homes and then wanting to learn how to invest and how to like either sell or get rental properties, short-term rentals. So that's kind of like my niche at the moment.
I'm curious, how did you market yourself to first-time home buyers?
I guess like more on the teaching side of like the process of buying a home, the do's and don'ts. So on the more educating side, like what to do as if you're a first-time home buyer. So when I post on social media, that would be kind of like a question that I would bring up, and if they want to know more, and then I would get a lot of messages more from people who had no clue how to purchase or what their credit was like, and then that's kind of like how it started, because I would just kind of like market to everybody, and then I just started to see that educating the first-time home buyer was more my niche.
That's perfect. I try and do the same thing. I'm a realtor in Ohio, and I make a lot of Facebook ads, and I always do first-time home buyer or first-time home seller, or just any niche I'm trying to get at. But I think that's a great niche to work on, first-time home buyers.
I think if I had to, it's Casey here, if I had to pick a niche, it'd probably be, over the last couple of years, I've built up strong relationships with estate planning attorneys, and also assisted living directors or facilitators or people that do placement, or packers. So a lot of assisted living facilities, they have packers that when someone commits to their facility, they'll introduce them to a packer, and you pay the packer a fee, but they'll come up and basically pack up your whole house, box it up all nice, and even move you into the facility and get your stuff set up. So being in the business of buying houses directly, and also selling houses, it's been a merry match. It could
Perfect.
certainly be stronger, and I could have more and kind of go deeper, but it's been a good start.
Yeah, that sounds like a perfect niche. All right, I like it. All right, I'm going to move on to the next slide, and we're going to talk about income autopilot, again, chapter 9. So again, creating a product for them, expert status. So this was interesting. He talks about a friend of his who basically became an expert in 4 weeks, and the different steps that it took for her to do it. So that's on page 170. I'm going to pull it up in my book here. All right, so 170, this is a friend of hers. So it took her 3 weeks to become a top relationship expert who is as featured in Glamour and other national media, has counseled executives at Fortune 500 companies on how to improve their relationships in 24 hours or less. So with this, it was only a 5-step process, which you can do in a month or less. So they recommend, first of all, joining 2 or 3 related trade organizations. Second, read the 3 top-selling books on your topic. I'd recommend, something new, obviously, for any new market trends. But if you read 3 books, you're ahead of 80% of people, especially if you read them in a month, if you're really engrossed in, what you're reading about. Next would be to give 1 free 1 to 3 hour seminar. It's easy now. I mean, you could really do this on Zoom. You could just make a Facebook group and do it, and then tell people you've done. You can record it. You can put it on YouTube. If you want to do it the old-fashioned way, you could. Maybe not now with the distancing, but if you want to like hold an event and invite people, you can do that. But just to get out there and say that you've done it. Hey, I'm an expert. I hosted a seminar on this. 99% of people haven't done that. So just taking the time to do that and doing it's going to make you better. And really, if you have to prepare yourself for a seminar, you're going to become an expert by default. You don't want to go up there and sound like a moron. So you're going to read and be prepared for it and become an expert just by preparing to do that. Part 4, he's saying, is optional. Offer to write 1 or 2 articles for trade magazines related to your topic. And then 5th would be to join ProfNet. This is a service that journalists use to find experts and to quote articles, saying that getting public relations is simple if you stop shouting and start listening. So really, it seems like it's not that complicated. If you want to become an expert on anything, it sounds like Casey, you're an expert on what you described. That's a pretty cool niche, and you probably know more about that than most people in real estate. So everyone can definitely find a niche, and if you don't have one yet, pick one, take a month, and you can learn it with these simple steps. All right, so next we're going to talk more about income autopilot, and with this we are talking about building a website. So with this, there was one quote that I thought was really interesting. This was on page 180, just a quick little quote. Don't ask people if they would buy, ask them to buy. So when you're building a website or really anything in sales, if you ask someone, hey, I've got a product, do you want to buy it? People usually are going to be, yeah, sure. Like, you don't want to be rude. You don't want to be disrespectful. You're going to say, yeah, of course I'll buy it. But that doesn't really mean much. I mean, make sure that, people are actually going to buy it. Okay, well, how about you buy it? Then you actually see if it's something that they want or they're just trying to be nice and say yes and not really buy it. So that's kind of what the main thing I took away from this was, don't just ask people, do you want this? Okay, here it is, buy it, yes or no. And then you can kind of see if there really is a market for whatever product or service that you're offering. And with this, he goes into the basics of building a website, setting up Google AdWords to test responses. This is so much quicker than it used to be to get, responses if your ad's good or not. He gives a couple examples of creating different ads with different websites, different links, and then just kind of getting like very quick feedback. Hey, this is working, this isn't working. Or, hey, this part's good, but not this part, and changing it right away. Google AdWords, you can change that quickly. If you do a Facebook ad, I do that all the time. I can see what's working, what's not working. But, when I first got into real estate, what I always read was to write hand-delivered or handwritten cards to people and send them in the mail, which is one, very time-consuming. It's not easy to do that. Yeah, exactly. But it works, but it's not, you don't know if it works or not until you spend hours doing it, waiting a week for people to get it and call you. When you're doing things like this, Google AdWords, anything online that you can test, if you try it for a couple days, you can spend $20 on it. If you get no responses, you can change it a little bit and try another experiment for 2 or 3 days, another $20, and just kind of go from there to see what the market says and to change immediately rather than waiting. And it's just so much better. Does anyone have any thoughts on that? Does anyone do their own online marketing, use Google AdWords, anything like that they want to talk about?
Hi, my name's Heather. I'll share. I'll just share the fact that I did have a website, and unless I drove traffic there, nothing happened to it. So that was the main thing, is just building the website was just the beginning. It was really all about driving traffic there.
Exactly. Just like anything, I mean, you can have all the knowledge and information in the world, But if you can't do anything, you've got no clients, it doesn't matter. So you can have the best website, but if you've got no traffic, it doesn't matter. Just like, someone in real estate, you can have all the knowledge about, assisted living, buying houses from people, but if you have no clients, it doesn't make a difference. So, Heather, yeah, good point. So getting people on your website, clicking and interested, that's kind of where it's at. And his micro testing really shows you what's working and what's not, and you can change things right away. All right, so next we're going to talk about Chapter 11, which is Income Autopilot 3. So we're talking about removing yourself from the equation with this. Contract outsourcing companies that specialize in one function to minimize interruption when people switch or leave jobs. One example in the book was there was a guy that was going out of town and he had one virtual assistant who was going to the hospital for 2 weeks, and his whole trip was ruined. He couldn't enjoy it, he couldn't relax. There was one point of failure and it failed at the most inopportune time for him. With this, he recommends, maybe having two or hiring a company, but, don't let one interruption from one person kind of stop your business in its tracks. Also, ensuring outsourcers are willing to communicate among themselves to solve problems. Give them written permission to make most inexpensive decisions without consulting you. So Tim has like 3 phases of this. When he started his business, he was deciding everything. Any question, any problem was going to him. He was the head of his brain quicking company. And it was overwhelming. It was tedious. He talked about he was doing an interview with someone, and every 5 seconds he'd get a text message or an email or an IM, and he couldn't step away because the business would fall apart. So he did a couple things. I think 6 months later, he set up a system where he gave autonomy to all of his employees to make a decision for up to $100 for any issue they had. If it was, something that was lost, just an error with an order, shipping, things like that, they can decide up to $100 using their best judgment to figure it out on their own. Later, he actually upped that to $500, which meant, one, he trusted the people he worked with, and he gave them control so he's not making every single decision over and over and over again. I think that's a great lesson, and he also talks about the infrastructure must be scalable. It should handle 10 orders per week as well as 10,000 orders per week. And to get to that point, there was 3 phases that he goes into. Phase 1 is the do-it-yourself, the DIY phase. So when you start a business or any venture, use this time to track common issues and customer service questions that have to be dealt with. So when you're starting, you don't know what kind of questions you're going to have, what kind of issues, and really, you kind of need to know the business really well to run it, to delegate it. So he's saying the first 50 orders to do everything, but keep track of it. Hey, I've got this question 4 times, or hey, this is a common error that's going on my website. To kind of fix all the bugs, figure out what they are up front. And once you're at 50, he recommends moving on to phase 2, which is adding automation. Here you create the frequently asked questions. So the first 50 deals that you had, you took note that you had the same question 3 times. Put that on the website on an FAQ. That way, if it comes up again, 1, they'll find it on your website, save you time. 2, if you have a question, you'll say, hey, here's a link to my website that answers all your questions. So that really saves tons of time, makes them way more efficient. And this is recommended for doing about 10 units per week, phase 2. And also finding a fulfillment company, so you're not doing everything and spending all your time running around with phase 2. Brings us to phase 3, which is upgrading, which is using your cash flow to add sophisticated services. With this, he talked about end-to-end fulfillment. So having a company that can handle everything for you, it may cost a little more, but they will handle 100% of your business for you. And then you can kind of step away and you can kind of monitor things, but you're not doing the day-to-day time-consuming, tedious things anymore. And this is phase 3, and there's no limit to this. I mean, up to 10,000 units, I think is what he mentioned, but whatever you can get, obviously. And then some other tips for business, keep it simple by reducing options, having 1 or 2 products available. This kind of made me think of, one place that has 1,000 options, which is the Cheesecake Factory. Have you guys ever been there? That menu is like 59 pages long, and I don't like going there because there's too many options. You could sit there and read forever, but he recommends just having 2 options, A or B. What do you want to pick? Making those the best, rather than to have 59 pages of pretty good things. If you have 2 excellent options, it's better for the consumer, and it's really better for you. You're not managing, all the different options and all the different problems with each one. Just become an expert on 1 or 2 things. And also people, they don't like to make decisions. They don't want to well, I have to think about this for a couple of days. I'll get back to you. And then they never do. It's like, hey, I'm going to do this or that. Or even having 1, even this is what I do it perfectly. I make the best XYZ, or my service is this. I do exactly this, and I do it extremely well. People, they like your confidence when you can say that, and you're not trying to manage 30 products. You're just doing 1 and doing it like an expert. I think that's great advice. He talks about having 2 shipping options, just regular shipping, 1 fast shipping option. Don't have 19 different ways to do it. Just, again, less choices for the consumer, your buyer, the more likely they are to actually, go with you. Eliminate phone orders, online only. I mean, this is pretty obvious, I think, in 2020. This is written, 10 years ago. So back then, I think phone orders were more of a thing, but just making everything online, which I'm sure we'd all do anyways. And he also recommends no international shipments, especially now with what's going on in the world. There's so much, it's hard to ship things across borders and all that. So just keep it simple, just keep it here in the States. We also talk about cleaning out unwanted customers. He recommends no money orders, which makes sense that he does that to eliminate people that are gonna maybe try and commit fraud, or it's just more complicated. If there's a wholesaler, make sure they have a tax ID, just to make sure they're not pretenders. Like, hey, this is someone that actually has a business. They have a business tax ID number. They're legitimate, rather than, hey, I just, I want to be a wholesaler, so I'm going to pretend to be. Jerry and I were talking a few minutes ago just about how sometimes you meet people online, they're pretenders. They pretend to be wholesalers or anything, but you can kind of tell. But this eliminates that, because they give me the proof. Like, let's make sure. In my business, it's a little different, but being a realtor, require a pre-approval. You want to see a house? Okay, show me you can buy it. I can't waste time showing houses of people that are pretenders. So this is the same concept, just making sure that they're legitimate buyers or consumers. Never negotiate pricing on high volume orders is another suggestion. No free trials. I agree with this. I think if you give something away for free, one, you're probably going to attract the type of customers that want everything for free and are difficult and are really cheap and cost conscious. So I think that's great advice. Giving away things for free just kind of, I think, could make your business look like it's cheap and not worth money, and that's not it at all. And then he also recommends no orders from common mail fraud countries as well. Anybody have any thoughts on that, about cleaning out unwanted customers or reducing options?
Yes, knowing right away when to walk away, because sometimes you want to convert them or make them into buyers, or be patient with the process, and sometimes they're just not. Know your niche and know your audience, because that way you can work harder for them and not waste your time.
Exactly. Anybody else?
So when we were beta testing our call center for quite some time, and so we made the mistake at the beginning not to define if we were going to onboard new investors, new wholesalers to cold call for, or it was going to be more on the seasoned side. And quickly we realized that we needed to define that, because the newer investors were very confused, didn't know how the process worked. And the seasoned investors had it all down. They sent their list, they had it. I mean, it was very seamless, not fully, but quite seamlessly. So we immediately identified that we needed to pretty much onboard seasoned investors to cold call for, because they were just a little bit easier to manage and understood the process a lot more than a newer investor. And we just didn't have the time either, because we had our team set up where it's like, you send us your list, we'll do the cold calling, and we'll give you your KPIs on a daily basis and all those things. But the newer investors wanted, like a report, like almost every hour on the hour, and that was just not productive for us or for them.
Right. No, that makes perfect sense. I had a client yesterday that was a first-time home buyer, and she demanded to look at the HOA financials for an HOA, where it was like $50 a month. And I sent it to her like 3 times. She had questions. I'm the buyer's agent. I'm helping her. I don't know. I'm just like, why do you need this? And I wasn't rude. I just said, like, can you tell me why? Like, what are you analyzing with this? Like, they've got plenty of reserve. Like, are you concerned about something? And she would just like, no, I just wanted to look at it. I'm like, well, I can tell you, being a professional, this is not the most important thing. They're fine. But some buyers or some consumers just have, like you said, Elizabeth, like new investors, they want all the information. They don't even know what they're looking at or why, but they just think they need to look at things to feel like they're doing something important, I guess. So yeah, good point. Anybody else have anything to add on? This is actually our last slide on chapter 11.
I'll share again. Hi, this is Heather, and I think that one important point in my mind is where it's saying clean out unwanted customers, and this is phase 3, and it says no free trials. It's at a later stage, because when I started the same business that had the website, the free trial for me personally was important to gain experience too, because it was a service. So in my mind, it's important to have that, that free trial be okay in the beginning, but it's, when you're at phase 3 and you're cleaning out unwanted clients, that's all I have.
Yeah, Heather, that's a good point. I think, maybe making things free or cheaper when you start to help you, the business owner, to learn, that makes sense. But you don't want to, get a name for being a discount service provider where that's your niche, is just being cheap all the time, even if you're doing a great job just being the cheapest, because you're not. You need to, get paid or compensated for your expertise. But I can see what you're saying with that, Heather, but also once you get the knowledge, you've done some deals or transactions or sold products or whatever your business is, to get away from that, because it's just not the kind of clients you really want to have, in my mind, and that's what Tim thinks too. Perfect. So this is that's it for this week. This is my information. If you want to check out my website, it's kwohio.com. That's my Instagram. This is Cashflow Chris's book club. So this is his information at Cashflow Chris, Leveling Up Book Club. And he's got a YouTube page. You can subscribe to Cashflow Chris. And he does offer some other services, a mastermind group, the book club that we're doing right now, the virtual assistants, the VA. Again, after this week, I think it's something that we all need to think about more, including myself. Actually, I contacted a transaction assistant this morning after reading this. I'm like, hey, I really need to do it. So I'm on it too. I think it's definitely convincing and great. So for next week, we are going to finish this book. So step 4 is called Liberation. And in my edition, it starts on page 227. It goes to page 310. After 310, there's actually the best of the blog that Tim's going to go into, some of his blog posts. I'm going to read that. If you guys want to talk about that, you can. I don't think it'll be in the slideshow, but if you guys read something in there that you want to talk about, we'll talk about it next week. But we'll focus on step 4, which is liberation. And I look forward to seeing everyone next week. And hopefully the last part of the book is as good as the first couple. So thanks again. Anyone have any questions? I'll stick around for a couple of minutes. All right, thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Appreciate it, Pat.
Yeah, thank you. Good chatting with you.
Yeah, man, we'll chat some more later, huh?
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you, Pat.
Thank you.